2007 data are available, but the chart doesn't look that different, so I thought I'd use the chart that was the basis of a report on these subjects. If you're interested in the full report, its website is shown on the other side, on the back side of that report. But look at the colorful front side for just a moment. First, notice that our energy is derived for two principal purposes: to provide for the transportation, the lower green sector, and to produce electricity, the upper orange box. By the way, this chart looks extremely complicated when you first look at it, but it is incredibly informative, because it will tell you that a lot of the stuff you're hearing is pure nonsense. Okay? But before looking at these two sections, notice the large gray bars that extend to the right. These represent the lost energy due to inefficiencies in energy usage. The very first event that I arranged for President Bush was in about April of 2001 in Los Angeles, in the middle of California's energy crisis. Energy efficiency was the theme of that meeting. The closed press meeting took place in LA, with then Governor Gray Davis and Mayor Richard Riordan in attendance. I invited several Valley and other California firms to show how electronic controls could make the use of energy more efficient, a critical need. After all, semiconductor parts had made fuel efficiency happen in the late 1970s, when engine controls were changed and fuel economy almost doubled by 1985. The meeting made such an impact on the President that he asked that we repeat the session in Washington at the Department of Energy, but invite companies from all over America as well to show what they were doing to produce energy efficiency. Policies and executive orders were the result of these meetings to improve the use of energy in some systems. It was a start, and the value of Silicon Valley technology as a piece of the energy efficiency solution was made very, very clear. Next, I'd like you to look at the lower section of the chart that shows petroleum usage. It's no surprise that petroleum dominates our transportation sector. I did place a black X over a bar going into the industrial sector. It's a little hard to see, but it goes into the industrial sector. For the most part, the supply of petroleum in that bar is as an ingredient for the some 300,000 different products manufactured in the United States where petroleum is a component. Plastics, tires, road surfaces, lubricants, even including ladies' lipsticks use petroleum. I'll not deal with this 20+% of our petroleum needs now, except to say that manufacturing these products is important to the U.S. economy. And I'll cover that in general when we get to the discussion of our current economic strength. By the way, since most of the 20% of our oil usage doesn't get burned up in its case, in these cases, there are few environmental impacts of this usage, other than those pertaining to disposal. In the transportation sector, that lower green sector, the most obvious place for improvement is again in efficiency. Notice that the lost energy contribution, the gray bars, from transportation run as high as 80%, for example, in light-duty vehicles. Many were calling on the administration to establish higher fuel efficiency standards early in the administration, but the Congress had reserved for itself the ability to set fuel standards for light vehicles. And with Congressman John Dingell of Michigan heading the concerned committee, no changes had been made for over a decade, and none were going to be made as long as he was there. Very clear. Congress is powerful. That's why you got to elect these guys, by the way. Okay? In the Energy Act of 2007, that changed, and the administration now has responsibility for setting all transportation fuel economy standards. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave to you and refer back to my politics comments, particularly in this administration. Staying on petroleum, note that almost 60% of our supply is imported. Canada is our largest supplier, with Mexico in the top 5. In total, we import petroleum from as many as 60 different countries. But many of our sources, important sources of petroleum, are countries that are not particularly fond of us. This is an energy security issue. How can we change it? We looked at the 3 other sources of transportation fuel today, all very small, on the chart. You see the natural gas line, the electricity line, and the biomass line. Now you need your magnifying glass on almost to see that, but they're all tiny contributors. We ruled out natural gas for 2 reasons as a principal solution to the transportation sector. First, there's a security issue here as well. In 2005, we imported almost 18% of our natural gas. The imports are now approaching 22%, just for existing non-transportation uses. While most of our supply comes from North America today, we were increasingly depending on less stable states. You might disagree, but it didn't seem the best idea to move transportation to natural gas. We hadn't heard from T. Boone Pickens at the time. So we didn't know what he knew about natural gas, but the trends didn't look favorable. Recently, however, there have been major new natural gas finds, which may make this alternative more practical, particularly for larger transport vehicles like large buses, large trucks, and those kinds of things. Of course, our fleet of existing cars isn't set up to readily use natural gas. With time, this could be resolved, but another alternative looked more promising. A second alternative fuel, if you allow me to use that term, is electricity. Big problem here again is the fleet isn't set up that way now, and the battery dilemma is real. We all agree that lots of research ought to go into this direction for lots of reasons, not the least of which is the efficiency of electric motors. You don't fry touching them as you do with internal combustion engines. They typically operate at about a 90+% energy efficiency. The inefficiency with electric motors is the formation of electricity. I have a bad burn on my hand that reminds me of that fact often from an internal combustion engine. In fact, one of the many companies that testified as we deliberated was A123, which, as you may have seen, went public a few weeks ago in a very successful offering. They're a new battery company. We actually heard from a number of new electric storage companies having an array of technology. Energy storage is a hot area of discovery, but has some time to go before it is ready to take on a major part of the transportation sector. That left biomass. We saw and see a real opportunity here to put a dent in gasoline supply with biofuels in the near term. First, we have 25 years of experience with ethanol as an oxygenant. Many of our cities are required to use 10% mixtures of ethanol so as to burn gasoline more cleanly during certain seasons of the year. Ethanol has about 113 octane rating and helps gas burn more cleanly. All vehicles produced since 1980 are qualified to make an E10 mixture, 10%, or take an E10 mixture, that's 10% ethanol, 90% gasoline. The numbers in the chart show that about 2% of our fuel today comes from ethanol. We suggested moving to 10% like E10 as rapidly as possible across the board in all seasons. Again, lots of reasons for that, but also lots of controversy as well. Our reasons were, first, that ethanol is compatible with the fleet, and we know how to make it. We know how to make cars flex fuel that run on E85 exactly. In fact, we were somewhat responsible for getting them to put the yellow gas cap on those cars so that you knew that you took an E85. The cost of ethanol is competitive with gasoline. Ethanol producers were telling us that they could compete with $40 oil. In practice, on the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, the wholesale price of ethanol falls below the wholesale price of gasoline on the NYMEX when oil gets about $60 a barrel. If you check the recent Wall Street Journal, gasoline cost a few cents more than ethanol, while oil was sitting at about $65 a barrel. As ethanol processes improve, there's reason to believe that competing with $40 a barrel oil is conceivable. Yes, today it uses corn, a food, but tomorrow it will start to be produced with other than food products. We estimated that cellulosic biofuels would be able to be used by 2012. That's still a pretty good bet. Fifth, by 2020 we estimated that food variants would not be competitive and wouldn't be used. Sixth, it starts us on a biofuels roll.